Trevor Lawrence goes 1, Zach Wilson 2. The big question was at 3. Some people were saying it's definitely Mac Jones. It's definitely not Mac Jones. It is Trey Lance, number 3 to the San Francisco 49ers. We saw the gambling odds swing this morning. We went to bed last night. It was Mac Jones the favorite. Woke up this morning, Trey Lance, and he's the guy. Brady, Danny, what do you think? 49ers kind of had us all in the dark.
Yeah, and this is kind of similar to how it's been in years past. Like last year, for example, the Miami Dolphins kept everyone in the dark. There was even a rumor the day of the draft it was going to be Justin Herbert, and it's still being Tua Tagovailoa. So just a case of teams throwing out smoke screens to ensure that their guy's still going to be there. This pick, though, I get it from the upside standpoint. He reminds me a lot of Dak Prescott when you watch him on tape. The way he runs, his physicality, elusive enough. And I think the arm, he can make all the throws. He's got a big arm. He's just a little bit inconsistent with his accuracy, in particular down the field. And much like some of these other guys we talked about, right? Zach Wilson played a lesser schedule of opponents. They were better than everyone they played. Mac Jones had the most talented team. Trey Lance played on a North Dakota State team that usually dominates. And even though this year they only had one exhibition game, you could still kind of see that in his one full year starting. So, you know, my only concern is he's a guy who hasn't played a lot of football, less than 400 passing attempts, wasn't asked to ever really dominate a game throwing the football. Even going back to his high school days, didn't have over 400 passing attempts. So to me, there's still some development there. I see the upside. I see what Kyle Shanahan's thinking. Look, if you're going to take a project, you're going to take a guy that needs some development. This is the best guy to pair him with, Kyle Shanahan, and the best situation for him to enter into.
Yeah, I just go back and it kills me because I'm sitting here thinking, what are we doing with Justin Fields?
Right.
Like, there are two quarterbacks that have a lot of risk to them. Yes, there's upside, but I think Justin Fields would have provided a better floor and maybe just as much upside. So that's a little bit confusing for me. But I do agree with what you said earlier. This is the best situation for the quarterbacks that we've seen yet. Trevor Lawrence is in kind of his own, but between Zach Wilson and Trey Lance, you know, played in the system with Mike Shanahan, trust John Lynch, culture, what they're going to do, be patient with them, surround them with good things. I think the thing that becomes interesting now is what happens with Jimmy Garoppolo.
You got to keep him, though, right?
I think
so. I would think you have to.
Yeah, because I don't think this is an instant upgrade. Like, I thought that's why Mac Jones had a chance, because he'd come in, pick up the offense, just distribute the ball to the right guys. I think Trey Lance has to develop somewhat and give him a little bit more time. So that, to me, is intriguing about this scenario. But I'm still looking at this. Like, if Justin Fields, and I hate that I even say this, had opted out, had not played this year, had not had the Indiana game, had not had the Northwestern game where he struggled.
It's a great question.
He probably would have been taken already off the board. And if Jonathan Jones likes Zach Wilson because he protects the ball and only had 3 interceptions, how about this dude? Trey Lance had 42 touchdowns he accounted for, 0 interceptions. So he's going to be smart with the football.
And would Fields have when he 3?
Right, exactly.
Kind of for like 50 touchdowns. So like all these guys do a darn good job of taking care of the football. We know that. To me, I think the interesting point about that is, as bad as those 2 games were, then you have the Clemson game.
But we forgot. Why didn't anybody look at that?
I mean, that was like the upside of what Fields can be. And you're going, wow, like if he can be that, why am I not looking at him here now? And in comparison to Trey Lance, who I get it, but they're kind of similar. I mean, can Lance run a 4.40? I know Justin Fields can. And I know Ohio State was reluctant to utilize him in that way 2 years ago because they didn't have a backup. They didn't want him to get hurt and have to go to a guy that wasn't going to be ready. And then you go to this past season. I mean, again, similar scenario. They weren't going to run him a ton until they absolutely had to. But the bottom line is, you know, Lance, there's a risk there. But you got to trust Kyle Shanahan, right?
Yep.
The interesting thing to me, though, is when you look at this decision, they're going to run him. I mean, he's got to be an actual run threat in the boots, actual quarterback run game threat, which goes back to his days being with RG3, not Matt Ryan, what we saw in Atlanta, not Kirk Cousins when he was with the Washington football team, or Brian Hoyer in Cleveland, the other spots, or Matt Schaub, for example, in Houston. None of those places. This is now, I guess, what Kyle Shanahan believes is required at the quarterback position in the NFL now, which is very different than what he's had success with in the past. Not that he didn't with RG3, but he got injured, and there was a short sample size compared to the rest of his career coaching.
Yeah, and so much value on these quarterbacks that do run, like the Josh Allens in fantasy. I mean, you can really rack up the numbers quickly when you're running all around. But as we check in with Heath and Dave, guys, the question is, as Brady and Danny were talking about, is he actually going to be the starter for the season, or is it going to be Jimmy G to start things off?
I think the only way that he begins the year as the starter for San Francisco is if he goes into camp and he pulls a Carson Wentz. What did Wentz do when he went to Philadelphia? He had such a good training camp, or at least a good enough training camp, that he was the starter week 1. They jettisoned the veteran before the season started. I don't think that's possible. I mean, I watched him play. He's a phenomenal talent. I think he's got the second most upside of any quarterback in this class. And I am really excited to see what Kyle Shanahan does with him. But he's got to develop him. And Pete Prisco and I talked about his footwork and his mechanics and how do you improve that. And it can be done. Josh Allen is proof of that. If Kyle Shanahan can bring that out of Trey Lance, he's going to be a dynamo for fantasy. In seasonal leagues, not drafting him. I'll wait for him to eventually start when Garoppolo gets hurt. That'll probably be about like week 4 or 5, something like that. Trey Lance will get going. But in dynasty leagues, and I don't mind saying this to you, to Jamie, you guys are in a dynasty league with me, I'm interested in taking him in round 2. I'm willing to be patient with him. I think there is that much upside with him. And I would say that no matter where he went, but you're putting him with Kyle Shanahan now, I get excited about what that could mean for Trey Lance long term.
Yeah, I don't think there's a very good chance that he starts week 1 right now, but who knows if Jimmy Garoppolo is still on the 49ers by the time we get to week 1. So it's intriguing. I'm certainly more intrigued by the upside for Lance in San Francisco than I am Wilson on the Jets. I think I'm probably going to have Lance ranked ahead of Wilson in terms of dynasty. But for 2021, you probably shouldn't count on drafting Lance unless you're in a deep 2 quarterback league. You should plan on adding him whenever it's his time to start.
All right, so it's the first time since 1999 we have quarterbacks go 1, 2, 3, and it's just the 3rd time in the common draft era. Lawrence, Wilson, Lance, 1, 2, 3 this season. Back in 99, we had Couch, McNabb, Smith, 71, Plunkett, Manning, Pastorini. So when you go back to 99, you had one of those guys was a hit, McNabb, the other 2 guys busts. 71, Pete, I'm going to have to defer to you on that one.
Plunkett was a bust for his first team and won 2 Super Bowls for the Raiders. The other 2 were very good football players, bad teams, though.
You were what, in high school then?
No. I was 11, but I was evaluating those guys.
And you're evaluating this pick of Trey Lance here, and it's not a good evaluation.
No.
It's a C-. Why?
It's a C-. If you just took him and you stayed in your spot, you'd probably give it a B. But to trade up 2 first-round picks to go get Trey Lance is just too big a price for me. He's raw. He played 1 game in the last 2 years. And if you put on his tape, and Brady, mentioned that he can move around, he reminds him of Dak Prescott. He reminds me of Steve McNair, a young Steve McNair, and he's probably not as good a passer as Steve McNair.
Really good, though.
It took him a while, though, and it did. It took him a couple. Remember, Chris Chandler was the starter early on, and then he took over.
They have that, though, in San Francisco.
Yeah, well, okay, so you're going to play with Garoppolo, and then you're trading for what? For the future, that he's going to be a star in a year or so? I don't know. I just think that they would have been better off taking Justin Fields and playing him. I never believed the Mac Jones stuff. I really didn't. I'm stupid enough. I had Trey Lance in my mock on Tuesday or last week when I said, no, I don't believe Mac Jones. And then I changed it, and I started believing the Mac Jones hype because people were telling me it was true. I think Trey Lance is a better prospect than Mac Jones. Mac Jones will be better in the immediate than Trey Lance.
But
C-.
But again, you're looking at it like I'll go back to talking to George Kittle when we had him on Skype, Zoom, whatever, during Super Bowl week. And, he said he supports Jimmy G. And you look at what this team is, getting Bosa back, all the guys defensively back, and what they have coming back for this year. They're going to be in the mix. Whether they're going to be a Super Bowl team again with everybody healthy like they were 2 years ago, that remains to be seen. And Jimmy Garoppolo can have that Alex Smith type effect, handing the reins off to Patrick Mahomes, like we saw in the Chiefs, the veteran, then giving way to the rookie. But Trey Lance may have the highest ceiling of every quarterback not named Lawrence in this class. We just don't know. I'm with you. I would have taken Fields also. But if Trey Lance becomes the guy that the 49ers think he can become, then the trade's going to be worth it.
Such a strange journey. Just 1 full season as a starter in college, and in high school he was in a wing T offense. His team was better than everybody else, so he never really put the ball in the air, never really played in the second half.
He'll be like in a wing T offense for the 49ers once he starts playing too, because they're going to run the heck out of the football.
And he's going to be running it as well. Okay, so that's 1, 2, 3 quarterbacks.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.